T-minus 30 seconds.
DeAndre Hopkins! Justin Jefferson, have a day! What a catch! C.D. Lamb! Only this guy, I think. I mean, maybe I'm trying to think of somebody else. And he hurdles his way into the end zone. Touchdown. Irish snared for the interception by Kenny Moore.
2, 1, 0.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into the final drive. Josh Frey-Sam back with you. Another beautiful, beautiful Sunday down. We are already through week 7 of this NFL season. Every single year I tell myself I'm going to hold on to each week, and just enjoy it, stay in the moment. But it always just goes by so fast. New week, new guest coming in. And I think that's enough of an intro. I'm gonna bring in my boy Mathias here from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Mathias, man, how you doing, baby?
How's it going, man? Happy to be here.
Hey, man, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Mathias, you are of the 49ers fandom, man. So I am actually really grateful that I get to have you on now because it kind of just worked out. The timing worked out really well to have you on. You being the 49ers, we just literally watched the 49ers in prime time. Obviously, did not go the way that you and the Niners wanted to tonight. But, man, let's break down. We got a couple games that we want to break down today. And happy to have you on, man. So let's start off with Sunday Night Football. This was obviously a pretty interesting matchup, on paper, a cross-conference matchup between the Colts and the Niners. Two teams who really needed a win desperately, right, to kind of stay in their respective divisional races, if you even want to call it that, because San Fran obviously being in the NFC West, with the Cardinals that are just soaring at 7-1, and even the Rams doing their thing, and then the Titans in the AFC South over there with the Colts. Titans are just on a roll now, and we'll get to them in a little bit. But what did you see out of your San Francisco 49ers and this game as a whole on Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, I was very interested to see what this matchup was going to be like going in. I think these two teams are pretty similar, and more similar than we think. I mean, they both heavily rely on the run game. They have two of the top linebackers in the game right now. And I don't know, their receiving could both use some work, I'd say, So, yeah, very, very similar. So I wanted to see, who would come out on top in that way. But, yeah, you know what? It's been a tough year as a Niners fan, to say the least. And I can say that, since that Super Bowl run a couple of years ago, it's been a tough go, and just the injury bug just won't stay away. But as far as this game goes, kind of a hard one to judge. I mean, that rain was just brutal. We knew it was going to be a run-heavy game to begin with, but that rain certainly boosted that up a lot more. But yeah.
Yeah, it played a huge factor. And I actually didn't even realize this game was going to be that crazy with the wind and the rain leading up to it until I was watching the pregame, and I didn't even bet on this. I didn't even end up betting on this game. I was going to, and then I just decided to avoid it altogether. But yeah, and I mean, the biggest thing too on the 49ers side of thing was with Trey Lance coming in. I think that everybody, I don't know what your thoughts were, but my thoughts personally, when Jimmy G went down, I figured that Trey Lance was now. Listen, I wasn't thinking that Trey Lance was going to pop off and just become some elite quarterback in the next couple of weeks or something like that. But I definitely did not think that Jimmy G was going to get his job back that quickly. And obviously Trey Lance being hurt kind of helps that along, but Trey Lance didn't necessarily pop off. So Jimmy G coming back for the first time now since his injury, I really thought that he was going to bring a little bit more stability to the offense. Trey Lance, I think I like the offense's design with Trey Lance in it better than I do with Jimmy G, just because of how much he provides as a runner with his legs. But Jimmy G provides, in my opinion, at this point in time, more stability, right? He's able to, hopefully you would think, make the better reads. We didn't really quite see that all the times tonight. But yeah, what were your thoughts when Trey Lance kind of took over there? Did you think that, barring injury, of course, that he was just going to take this thing and run with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's hard to say because he is so young and he is so raw, and um, not the Niners and Niners fans themselves kind of, we kind of figured that going into this year, like, hey, this guy is very raw. There were options at the draft, like Mac Jones, for example, that, hey, these guys are maybe a bit more developed and pro ready, but Lance provides that upside. So, I mean, yeah, it is disappointing that he didn't come in and provide that spark right away, like I might have hoped. But I mean, yeah, again, he is still super raw, and that's going to come with time. And maybe, I mean, down the road here, like, here's another loss. They're 2-4 now. Like, they're getting desperate, and Lance definitely provides more of that upside. He can bring those big plays. He can throw it deep. He can run the ball. While Jimmy's kind of more of a, safe bet. He'll go through his reads. He won't do anything too crazy, and kind of the safe bet. But then, I mean, he's supposed to be the safe bet, and here he is throwing 2+ interceptions on Sunday Night Football. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe Lance is the option going forward, and just kind of develop him from there, because he is the quarterback of the future, and I think everybody knows that. But maybe it's time.
Yeah, man. And personally, me as a bettor, I'm very frustrated with the San Francisco 49ers. I thought coming into this season, like, I thought this was going to be a three-way race in this NFC West. I definitely didn't see the Niners. Now, obviously, like you mentioned already, the injury bug has got to the Niners. Everybody's dealing with injuries, but yeah, the Niners have really, between last year and this season as well, they're one of the worst in the NFL in terms of when it does come to the injuries. So that's a huge hurdle that they have to overcome. But yeah, me as a bettor, I put down a futures bet on the Niners to go over, I think, 10 wins or something like that. 10.5 wins, I think, is what it was. And that's not looking very good right now. But I really was confident in that bet. But regardless, man, I mean, the Niners obviously coming out of this game, I think that the bigger story is with the Niners here, and what they're doing, what their situation is going forward, just purely because of the quarterback situation. But the Colts, on the other hand, too, I mean, Colts, do you think that they have any kind of shot here at the AFC South? Like, with the way the Titans are rolling?
Yeah, the thing is, the Titans are beatable, and we saw that because they lost to the Jets only a couple weeks ago. Right? It was the Jets.
I think so. I
think it was the Jets. It was some big loss, and they are rolling right now, but I think they're just so inconsistent. And AJ Brown will be, he's been injured, but sometimes he's really good and sometimes he's non-existent. And Julio hasn't had the best year, and Derrick Henry is going to be Derrick Henry, but I'm not really sure. And like, going into the season, I thought the Colts would be the team out of that division for sure, just because I like their game. I think they have a lot of weapons there, and and I think I really like their game. Jonathan Taylor is a beast, and I don't know. I just thought too, like, early on in the season, it was just some poor coaching decisions on and play calling, in my opinion. Like, Naheem Hines is great and everything, but Jonathan Taylor is one of the top 5 running backs at this point. Why are you not playing the guy? And you're wondering why you're losing. You're wondering why. I think they're 1-3 at one point or something like that, and you're wondering why, and you're like, well, you're not playing your best player, and you're not spreading all your options. And when your run game's going like it has been, I think he's ran for over 100 yards the past 3 games. It's going to open up other options. So I mean, I won't be surprised if the Colts do come and challenge the Titans a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to watch down the stretch for sure. Obviously, it's just a 2-team race there, and also like on your note there with Jonathan Taylor, before we move on to another game here, but I kind of attribute to the similar, same as almost like Miles Sanders over there in Philadelphia. Now, listen, I'm not saying Miles Sanders is on the same level as Jonathan Taylor, but Miles Sanders is a great playmaker in his own right, and he's just not getting the touches over there. He hasn't been getting touches, and so I know that can be frustrating for fantasy managers. Luckily, I stayed away from him this year, but Miles Sanders is he's a playmaker out there, right? And he's just not getting the touches, and I think that that's just kind of a it's a head scratcher when you're looking at the coaching staff and who's calling the plays and who's designing these plays, and kind of saying like, okay, well, why isn't Miles Sanders, getting the ball more? And some people are saying that Kenneth Gainwell is just simply outplaying Miles Sanders, and that's fair, but I think Miles Sanders is still good enough of a playmaker to the point where you need to figure out ways. You got to scheme ways to get him the ball, like you're kind of talking about with Jonathan Taylor there in Indianapolis. But okay, man, let's move on to the Cincinnati-Baltimore game here, and this was. I'm actually kind of fired up to talk about this game. Cincinnati 41-17. The Cincinnati statement, big
Absolutely.
statement game from the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, we're talking a week after the Baltimore Ravens played the Chargers last week, week 6. They came out with a huge statement game themselves, knocking off the Chargers there, and what I thought was going to be a Chargers win, an outright Chargers win. Baltimore ended up absolutely just taking them to school there. And now next week, the Cincinnati Bengals in a huge divisional matchup to take over the AFC North there. Huge statement game, just absolutely decimating. Jamar Chase, eight grabs, 201 and a tug, most by a Bengals rookie in a game, 754 yards. This has been already talked about to death in the Sunday Night Football broadcast, but 754 yards in 7 games, which passed Anquan Boldin for the most by a rookie since 1970. And Anquan Boldin's actually funny. It's Anquan Boldin because I know Daniel Jeremiah, a guy that I follow very closely when it comes to the draft stuff. His comp for Jamar Chase was Anquan Boldin. It was like a faster Anquan Boldin, kind of that possession receiver type thing.
Right.
I know that you watched this game, Matthias. I was not watching it as closely because the Packers game was on. What did you see from this game? Like, what was this just like? Yeah, what happened there?
Well, it's just the Bengals are just a different team this year, and I thought, Joe Burrow looked really good last year in my opinion, and he was almost kind of a dark horse MVP for me, like super dark horse this year. But he's got the weapons, and it's coming all together now, and he's got lots of weapons. Like I said, he's got Boyd, he's got Higgins, Chase is playing unreal. That draft pick looks like $1 million now. Joe Mixon's playing good football. Everyone was questioning how he was going to do this year before the season with that O-line and everything. And yeah, everything's just coming together. I thought Marlon Humphrey would do a better job of shutting those guys down, but it was just kind of overwhelming for that Ravens defense. And I wanted to bring up too, like, the Ravens have looked shaky at times, in my opinion. If you go back to that Lions win, I forget what week that was, but that Lions win, I mean, this team's beatable, and they've squeaked away with a couple, and that Chargers win was definitely a statement, but they've showed signs of this type of play in the past. So to say like it was surprising, like, not really. I mean, it felt like it was almost maybe a matter of time before Lamar, didn't get that Hail Mary or that crazy 30-yard run or stuff like that. But just to pass it to you after, I think the Bengals are the real deal this year. I'm going to be honest. I think they look good. Yeah. Their defense is playing well, and Joey Burrow, he's playing well.
Yeah, man, this is a really good team, and I got to see them not in person, but I got to actually watch them for a full game when they played the Packers a couple of weeks ago. And I was just, obviously that was the first big test of the season for the Bengals, was playing the Packers, and they did lose that game, but they hung around in that game. They actually came back in that game. They're just I don't really know how to define the Bengals, because I'm not going to sit here and say that the Bengals are they're going to make a deep postseason run this year. They're still a very young team, but they're kind of just this pesky team. Like, they're good. Like, they're not like great. They're just good. They're winning. You know what I mean? They're winning.
Somewhere in between.
They're somewhere in between, And actually, as we're speaking right now, the Bengals hold the number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs right now. Now the Buffalo Bills just had a bye this week, so there's that. But regardless, the Bengals are actually on top of the American Football Conference as it stands right now. And yeah, man, the Bengals right now, with Joey Burrow and all those weapons, like, one thing that I did want to bring up, actually, so I was doing, after this game was over, I was doing a little bit of research and stuff like that, just for my own personal enjoyment. And so the Bengals past 2 off seasons, it was noted very heavily that they were doing a lot of spending in free agency, right? Last season, I think they spent $120 million in 2020, bought a guy like DJ Reader, Von Bell. They whiffed on guys like Mackenzie Alexander and Trey Waynes, but then they go in this. And my problem with the 2020 offseason for the Bengals was that they look like they kind of just brought in a bunch of band-aids kind of thing, like just a bunch of guys that they threw money at these guys and was like, okay, let's see if these guys will make our team better. And they didn't really, you know what I mean? Like, they made their team a little bit better, but it wasn't wasn't quite what you were hoping out of your free agency class. And then they go in this year, and then they spend $200 million in this year's free agency. Trey Hendrickson, Mike Hilton, Chidobe Awuzie, Larry Ogunjobi, pardon me, who's balling out right now. Even Riley Reef, who was a big one at the left tackle position. The Bengals now brought in these guys, spent a bunch of money, and these guys are gelling. Like, they're going crazy together right now. Now, the offensive line for the Bengals right now, this is the part that kind of gets me a little bit, and I'll get your thoughts on this in a second. The Bengals offensive line is still allowing the 7th most pressures right now in the NFL. And obviously going into last offseason, the Bengals and their needs were offensive line, which is why I was very upset when they took Jamar Chase at 4th overall and not a guy like Rashawn Slater or Penei Sewell even. 7th most pressures allowed still. Tied for the 8th most sacks per game allowed at 2.7 per game, which is a little bit down from the 3 per game that they're giving up in 2020. But yet, Jamar Chase is going crazy. Joe Burrow is still putting up all these numbers. I'm looking around like, why is this team doing so? Why is this offense putting up these numbers still when Joe Burrow is still kind of under similar heat? You know what I mean? That he was last year. He's not getting out the ball any faster. He's still getting it out the same amount of time that he was in 2020. His average intended air yards is still the same as 2020 as well. So it's not like he's getting the ball out of his hands on short routes or anything like that. I'm kind of confused. Question that I did want to ask you though, Matthias, is on Jamar Chase's note. I know that your bread and butter is in the college game. Did you expect this kind of dominance from Jamar Chase coming into this league right away? Like, I know it's kind of tough to say that he's already one of the premier receivers in this league, obviously. It's tough to say that, but did you expect like a level of dominance from him like this early?
It's really hard to say, but I mean, no, to be honest, no, I didn't. You could talk about how great he looked at LSU and everything, and how good him and Joey B meshed at LSU, and obviously they had a magical season together. But the guy took a year off. He didn't play football at all, and then he comes into training camp. Everyone's talking about how he's dropping all these passes and stuff. I mean, there wasn't much to expect going in, and I think maybe that's why everyone's also so blown away by this, because his expectations were a lot lower than a top 5 draft pick would be going into this season because of those rumors. But I mean, as far as the college and to the NFL game is translated for him, I mean, he looks like he's still playing college at this point. It's insane. I can't believe it, but I mean, I guess that's just a testament to the college game at this point. And when you're that talented, it's going to translate. So
and the other thing, and I mean, well, with Joe Burrow's note as well, it's kind of sucks that he has the same comeback year as Dak Prescott does, who is one of the MVP candidates right now. Otherwise, Joe Burrow probably would be the lead dog for comeback player of the year. Do you think that who's your comeback player of the year? It's probably Dak, right?
Yeah, it's got to be Dak. It's got to be Dak.
Like, he's just going crazy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no question. Okay, so Joe Burrow, 416 and 3 tugs today. I wanted to move on quickly to the coaching carousel here, because entering this year, I had guys like Cliff Kingsbury with the Cardinals, Zach Taylor with the Bengals on this band. That's my transition from the Bengals here into this coaching carousel. And then John Gruden was another guy who was kind of like a dark horse as okay, if they're not doing so well, like, questions are going to be raised. There could be some changes, right? So those are probably, especially the top 2, Cliff Kingsbury and Zach Taylor, were my top 2 guys in terms of, okay, you got to watch these guys. If their teams aren't doing well, they're out. There's going to be a new regime coming in. Cliff Kingsbury 7-0, Zach Taylor's 5-2 atop of the AFC. Now, as it stands, do you have any kind of guys that you are looking at, any teams or coaches, I should say, that you are kind of like on the hot seat about right now?
Yeah, I got a couple, and quickly before I get into like kind of the main guys, one guy that's actually worth noting is going into this year or early on, back to the whole Jonathan Taylor, play your best players. Frank Reich, he was on my on my list because this team was supposed to be good. They were losing. Seems like they're turning around now, so maybe he's off the hot seat a little bit here, but that's still something maybe to take note of down the road. But
okay,
I mean, the number one guy I kind of have right now is Andy Reid. I mean, this Kansas City Chiefs team. I know, and it's a hot take. It's a hot take.
Huge hot take.
But you got to look at this Kansas City team. You got one of the best quarterbacks. You know, am I going to say the ever word? Maybe not. Yeah. But he is very good, and he's got a great offense. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, all these guys, and they can't seem to win a game. And I know Mahomes got hurt. I think it was in the fourth quarter though today.
Yeah.
But only 3 points. That's just not good enough. The defense doesn't look good. They're putting up getting put up way too many points against bad offenses that shouldn't. And so that's definitely a name maybe to put out there. Another guy that I might talk about quickly is Mike Zimmer from the Vikings. I've never really been a fan of him, and I thought maybe he's been on the hot seat for a while. They seem to keep him around, but this Vikings team's just too good to keep going. I think they're 3-3. They're a lot better than that, and I think maybe it's time to move on from him. But yeah,
it's interesting you say Mike Zimmer, because I did write him down as kind of like my coaches now that are on the hot seat a little bit. And Mike Zimmer, I'm actually a guy, I have a ton of respect for Mike Zimmer. I think that he's one of the better defensive minds in the NFL, which and I know that just listening to Aaron Rodgers interviews over and over and over again, he consistently each and every year is talking about Mike Zimmer and how much respect he has for him. So I can go off of that as well. But on that note, on the Mike Zimmer note, I also have Matt Rule. Matt Rule is apparently with the Panthers. I'm a big fan of Matt Rule. What he's doing over there with Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator right now. But Matt Rule right now under the Panthers media and looking at what their beat writers are saying, it's getting a little toasty there on that seat for Matt Rule right now, sitting at 3-4 with the Panthers. So that could be a name that you look at right now, and especially the fact that he is a college coach, right? Coming up just from college just a couple years ago. Maybe a couple people would be a little bit quicker to pull the cord on him per se, just because he is a college coach rather than a proven guy at the NFL level, right? He's not going to get necessarily the benefit of the doubt per se. Matt Rule is a guy to keep an eye on. Matt Nagy, I also have with the Bears. He was a guy for me. I really had as a dark horse candidate entering this year. The Bears don't make the playoffs this year. I understand Justin Fields. The saving grace for Matt Nagy this year could be Justin Fields, progressing mightily at the quarterback position and giving it a great outlook, right? The prospects for next season look really good on the shoulders of Justin Field. That's the only thing I can think of. But Matt Nagy, as it stands right now, is on the hot seat. Mike Zimmer, like you said. I also have Joe Judge with the New York Giants. Urban Meyer.
Oh yeah.
I don't Urban. I think everybody can agree. I don't know. Does Urban Meyer? He's not going to be back next year, right?
No.
There's just no chance.
I think he's got a cushion for maybe a couple weeks here after that win the other week. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I've heard so many things how that locker room is just gone and nobody respects him anymore. And I think it's done.
Once you lose the locker room, man, that's tough. And then the final guy that I have is Vic Fangio over there in Denver. Vic Fangio he's known for his defensive prowess, and it's just a matter of his defense started off the year really good. It was against bad teams. We were given the benefit of the doubt. And then now that they played some better teams, starting to look a little bit shakier now. Of course, they played a banged up Browns team on Thursday night, held them to a certain amount of points there, didn't allow too many points, but still, the Broncos right now, a little bit shaky right now, especially on the shoulders of Teddy Bridgewater there. Now, replacements-wise, before we just go on further here into our final game here, before we wrap things up, replacements, I have guys like Eric Bieniemy with the Kansas City Chiefs, offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, Brian Dable, the offensive coordinator with the Bills, Nate Hackett, the offensive coordinator with the Packers, Matt Eberflus, who we just watched on Sunday Night Football, the defensive coordinator for the Colts, and then Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and finally Kellen Moore, the OC for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, these are all names that people probably know pretty well if you watch football. Probably pretty familiar with these names. But you being of the college fandom, big time college guy, man, are there any college coaches that you can actually maybe see making a push for a job in this upcoming offseason?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a couple names, especially this year with, some of the teams that we weren't really, I'm not sure how much you followed college, but some of the teams that we weren't really expecting too much to do well that are, and you definitely have to give credit to some of the coaches.
No doubt.
my first one here is Luke Fickell from Cincinnati. They're ranked number 2 right now, I believe, undefeated. That offense looks great. Their defense is looking good. Looks like they're bound for the playoffs. So maybe he's one to watch for at the NFL level. But I mean, it all depends. Sometimes these guys, they want to stay at the college level. Sometimes they're loyal to their teams. LSU's looking for a coach after this year. And there's one other team that I can't think of off the top of my head that's looking for a coach. A couple other names: Mel Tucker from Michigan State. Hate to call it Michigan State. I'm a Michigan guy, but they're undefeated. They're looking good this year, and it's all about the teams that weren't supposed to, in my opinion. So I mean, of course, you can say, oh, the Jimbo Fishers and the Nick Sabans and all the big coaches, but those guys are never really gonna jump up to the NFL level. So one other guy before we move on that I'll say quickly is Dave Clawson from Wake Forest. Wake Forest, they're undefeated for the first time since 1950, I believe, and they're being led actually by I don't know if you ever watched QB1 on Netflix.
No, actually, no.
Oh, what a great show! But this quarterback was on. His name's Sam Hartman. He's the starting quarterback of Wake Forest right now. He's just playing lights out, and him and Dave Clawson are really gelling. So that could be another guy that could jump up and maybe take a Jaguar spot, or depending on what the Dolphins do, if they're going to move on from Brian Flores or Dan Campbell, even how's it working out with the Lions? Teams like that, maybe it's worth a gamble. But yeah, that's just a couple names that I got floating around there.
Yeah, that Wake Forest, that would be very interesting if he was able to just actually make that climb like that. Yeah, there are certainly a couple of names like that, especially you're looking at like Luke Fickell as well. He's doing a great job over there, and like you mentioned, with at the college level, a lot of these guys, they're either just loyal to their programs, right? They want to continue to build, right? Luke Fickell he's built that program now in a very short amount of time. He might just want to try and win a national championship with that team, see what he can do if he can continue to grab recruits. Now, obviously, that's going to be a very tough task to do to win national championship, but regardless, see if he can grab more recruits there, build a very good football program over there in Cincinnati. But yeah, and then also on that note as well, you mentioned that LSU, which is a premier job at the college level. I mean, you would think that before maybe he gets to the NFL, maybe he would take the next jump into the LSU spot, but who knows? Maybe he does get to the NFL before then. But I like those picks for sure, man. Let's get on to our last game here, and that is the Tennessee Titans versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this, man, we could talk about the Tennessee Titans and their bounce back here, but I think that as we kind of talked about a little bit before, the story here is the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Derrick Henry finished with more passing touchdowns in this game than Patrick Mahomes did. Okay, 1 touchdown to none for Patrick Mahomes there. Andy Reid, fun fact, 1-8 in his career versus the Titans.
Wow.
So that's very shocking, right? And so that is that's something that I wrote down, because if the Titans and the Chiefs somehow, some way find a way to meet in the playoffs this year, I mean, that is surely a stat line that you're going to hear come up as they lead up into the playoff game, is Andy Reid. And he's been actually surprisingly not very good. His teams have been surprisingly not very good against the Titans in his career. Do you think, Matthias, that the Kansas City Chiefs should still be considered as contenders? And maybe you just finished talking about Andy Reid possibly being a dark horse as for on the hot seat, but do you think that the Chiefs should still be considered as contenders right now?
I think you have to still. I mean, this team's just so good
loaded
still. Yeah, they have so much talent that it's hard to even keep them out of that conversation. But yeah, I think it all has to start with their defense. They're just getting worked right now, and there's only so much Patrick Mahomes can do when their defense is just getting overloaded like that. But also, on the offensive side of things, I'm just looking right now. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce combined for just over 100 yards today. No touchdowns. Like, they need to be better, and I don't know. They're gonna have to figure out something. Absolutely. But I don't think you can count them out. And is it too early to call out Andy Reid's name, maybe. But I mean, also like how much time do you have, right? Like there's every team has a window, right? And Kansas City's definitely still in their window, so there isn't really much time to waste. If things aren't working out, you gotta figure out a solution. So that's why I threw out Andy's name there.
And that's fair enough. And it's the first time I think in the Patrick Mahomes era that the Kansas City Chiefs scored under 10 points, which is pretty incredible. That's just an incredible stat on its own that they've had. This is kind of their first big dud of a game, really, in the Patrick Mahomes era. They've obviously had some not so good games, but this is the big dud from them that they've put up. Also, Patrick Mahomes is on pace to throw 21 interceptions this season, and also currently holds a passer rating of 97.9, which is actually still pretty good, but is far below what we're used to seeing from Patrick Mahomes. As a final thing here, let's rank the AFC. Who are your top 5 teams in the AFC right now? And I'll give you a second to think about that. I'll give mine first. Mine are the Bills. I think are clear-cut the top team in the AFC right now. Chargers second, Browns third, Raiders fourth, and then followed by, surprisingly, the Bengals. I have as the 5th best team in the AFC right now. This team is crazy right now. Who's your top 5 teams in the AFC? Because this conference is absolutely wide open right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've actually a pretty similar list to yours. Not that I'm, going off of what you just said, but I did make this beforehand, I swear.
Okay.
But yeah, I got Bills, Chargers, I got Raiders, then Bengals, Ravens. And I think, obviously that's subject to change. I think the Titans and Browns are both right there in my opinion. But yeah, Bills have to be clear-cut number 1. Chargers, I love Justin Herbert. I think he can take this team to the promised land, absolutely. Raiders, Derek Carr is looking great. Bengals, like I said, Joey Burrow, love him. He's got weapons. The defense is looking pretty good. And then Ravens, you can never really count Lamar out. He can do some special things, and that's what I got.
No. Yeah, I like that list for the most part. I'm still I'm a hater of the Ravens.
Oh, me too. I can't stand them, but
yeah, they're just something about this team this year is just maybe it is and you want to know what, on a quick note on that, is like there's something to say for teams that can just grind out wins. You know what I mean? Like if you can just get the ugly win, right? That's a sign of a good football team. But
it's respectable, at least.
It is, right? But like at the same time, like something really, really has just been sitting wrong with me with this Ravens team. And then especially what really did it in for me was when they beat the Lions on that last second field goal. And I just kind of sat there to myself. I said, this just isn't a contending football team. Like, I'm sorry. And, and like they could get better, but maybe it's too quick to judge them. But I am so not sold on the Baltimore Ravens. I've talked about that a ton on this show. Go ahead,
right.
Sorry.
It just seemed like only a matter of time before a game like this happened for them. But quickly, I need to ask you, how come you're so high on the Browns?
The Browns, I think that they just have a ton of talent on their team, man. Like I think they just have a ton of talent. As simple as that. Now, when they're healthy, of course. Now Odell Beckham Jr., I really do think that he's going to be cut or traded or something like this offseason. He is not meshing into this offense whatsoever. They're not even. This is a play. Odell Beckham Jr. is a player that, regardless, say what you want about his injuries or whatnot, and maybe if that they've slowed him down or anything like that, but he is still one of the better playmakers in the NFL. And that is just a guy that you need to get the ball into his hands, and they're not even trying to do that. So I think that you need to cut ties with Odell Beckham Jr. But regardless, this team right now, Odell, Jarvis Landry, they have one of the best offensive lines in football. They're two-headed monster with Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And then Baker Mayfield isn't going to be a guy who's going to, in my opinion, go out and win you a Super Bowl on his own. Right? He's not a truck. He's not going to drag his team over the finish line, but he is enough of a piece for me that you can build around him, which they have done. And he can be a very good top 10 quarterback in the NFL that can win you a playoff game, possibly. You know what I mean? And then even on the defensive side of the ball, they're young, they're tenacious, they have so much talent. JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koroma is probably might be the steal of the draft thus far. This guy, watching his tape, he is so ridiculously explosive all over the field. His lateral quickness is just scary to watch. It's just a talented team across the board. Now, I have them as, I think I put them as my third best team in the AFC or second best team in the AFC there. I think that the fall off, there is quite the gap between the Bills and the rest of the AFC. I think that the Browns and the Chiefs, or the Browns and the Chargers, are kind of in that B tier, but the Bills are far and above for me. Yeah, the Browns, I think they're just a good team.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd have to agree with you with that. There's definitely lots of skill on the team, and I think they do have what it takes to be good. It's just, yeah, there's something there that they're not maybe putting all together. I know Chubb's hurt right now, and Hunt was hurt last week, and they've had their problems with that. But yeah, there's just something there. It's almost they kind of remind me of the Ravens in that way, where they are a good team maybe, but there's just something
not firing on all cylinders kind of thing. Yeah, and I kind of get that sense as well. I really do. One thing, actually, you know what, man? Last thing before we get out of here that I wanted to talk about, because I did have the Atlanta and Miami game written down here. This quick side note: Kyle Pitts has officially arrived. Okay, he is. Anyway, that guy's he's going to be scary for a long time. Yeah. What do you make of the Tua situation here in terms of? I know that the Deshaun Watson rumors of him going to Miami. What are your thoughts on Tua himself? Like, regardless of if they could get Deshaun Watson, is Tua a franchise quarterback in your mind?
I like Tua. I like Tua. I think he's a playmaker. I think he wins you games. I think, he's a stud. But that was Alabama Tua. I haven't seen that yet. And I know, maybe Miami isn't the greatest team. He hasn't had the best opportunity. But, I mean, if there was a season to prove that, it was this year, right? I mean, he's got Jalen Waddle. I'm not sure if Will Fuller has really played any games yet.
No, but got hurt after being suspended.
Right. So they have Myles Gaskin. Like, he has weapons there, and he has the opportunity to be putting something together, and he just hasn't. So I mean, with the Dolphins team, if you can get an upgrade, I mean, with Deshaun Watson, as much trouble as that might bring, I mean, yeah, I think you might have to take that shot. I think, maybe Tua is still a little raw, and he's got stuff to prove. But the NFL is all about, going after it right now, and you just don't have time to wait, unfortunately. But.
And I agree with you on that in that respect as well, because it is you have to do now, especially when he's in a draft with Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. Those two guys they're producing right now, right? And he was picked ahead of Justin Herbert. So the fact that he is not producing at the same level as those guys is just pretty that is not a good look for him. Deshaun Watson, I personally don't know why any team would make a trade for Deshaun Watson right now, but hey, that's their organization to run. But Tua Tagovailoa for me is like the only thing for me with Tua is the fact that he is only, I think, 15 games into his NFL career, 15 starts into his NFL career, something like that. Like you said, you got to produce now. It's a now league, but at the same time, like I'm very shocked at the fact that we're having the conversation that he is, whether or not he's a franchise quarterback, or like whether or not we should pull the plug on him or whatnot. I understand maybe he hasn't shown everything that we wanted to, but I was hoping for maybe a little bit more slack from him. But yeah, man, I don't know. You got any final thoughts here on week 7?
To be honest, not really. I think it was a weird week. My thoughts have brought out there. Yeah, it's been a weird year. It seems like overall. I mean, and just like we talked about there, like what's happening with KC. The Bengals are leading the AFC right now. It's been strange for sure, but definitely looking forward to what the rest of the year is going to bring.
No doubt, man. Well, Mathias, man, thank you very much for hopping on to the program, man, and hopefully we can bring you on again later on in the year.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Sounds great. No problem, man. Thank you very much for tuning into the Final Drive, everybody. We will see you next week. Should have a couple great guests on next week, so be sure to tune into that. We'll see you then.